computer. All right, so I like you got the Mando shirt on, the Dadalorian.
The Dadalorian. I figured if you know what, if I'm gonna be here with you, I might as well just keep my Star Wars juju just going.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. All right, welcome back to another episode of Hacks and Hobbies. In this episode, we get to speak with Jeff Bull. Jeff, thank you so much for jumping onto the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, man, when I saw that you were wearing a Star Wars shirt back at Social Media Marketing World, I was like, okay, we've got connections. And then you showed off these badass tattoos on your on your arms. I'm like, holy smokes, you're definitely a step ahead.
I am a little obsessed, I guess you'd say, with Star Wars. I'm wearing my Dadalorian shirt today. I have 3 Star Wars tattoos. I guess you can count some of us more than that, but yeah, I do. It's kind of my thing. And if anyone can see the video in my shed here, it's basically my little shrine to Star Wars behind me.
Nice. I love that. I totally love that. I was just talking to my wife earlier. I was like, I want to put these shelves up in the basement so then the kids can show off their Lego sets. We have the Kylo Ren ship, the Lego ship. My
Hmm.
my son built it, and then I also have two TIE fighters. So
Oh,
my
that's
younger
awesome.
son, 7 year old, he was 6 when he built his. He's like, I'm gonna do it on my own. I'm like, all right, go for it. So I've got one more that I wanted to like do a live stream as I'm building it. I just never got around to it because I'm like, oh, I need a over the head camera shot. I need side camera shot, and I just like
Yeah,
it's just the whole set is still sitting up there.
I
One
hear you.
day I'll put it together.
I do have Kylo Ren's ship back there. It's up on the shelf up there
Back
someplace.
there.
You can't
Okay.
really see it, but it's right there.
Yeah.
I don't have a Tie Fighter though, but I do have Boba Fett's ship. It's behind my dad. My chair's
Oh,
big, so you can't see it. But I have. I think they're calling it the Fire Spray now, whatever the
the
name
fire
the
spray.
new name for it is.
The
So
new
I
name.
have. I
Oh,
have that back here someplace. It's kind
I
of
see
buried
it.
in
I see
the
it.
darker
Mhm.
colors. But yeah, there's all kinds of Legos from Star Wars back here, and I have a few still in boxes I haven't built because I have no place to put them. I've tried to convince my wife to let me to buy the actual Star Destroyer, which is like
Mhm.
10,000 pieces or something. And like, I'm like, I could hang it from the ceiling. And she
Hang it
just
from
shakes
the
her head
ceiling.
and she's like, I'm
I
not
don't think
talking to you
so.
anymore.
Oh my God, we could talk about Lego and Star Wars for a long time, but
Yes, I could do an entire show just on those two things easily.
don't you already have a show that you do?
I do. Shameless
So
plug. Every Thursday night, my buddy Ryan and I go live on YouTube, a
okay,
show called The Kessel Chat, and we talk about Star Wars from the perspective of storytelling. So
okay,
it's a lot of fun. It's not the type of show where you go to learn. Here's the latest hot takes from an episode. We do
yeah,
episode breakdowns and things like that, but
sure,
the whole focus is on how is this various content, books, audio, movies, telling stories? How is it conveying stories that actually connect to us as people?
nice.
It's a lot of fun for the two of us.
No, I'm gonna have to check it out because that's something that I am a huge fan of. Not as high level as yourself, but I got a little bit of Star Wars constructible figures that they've discontinued. I've got some of those hanging out back
That's
there.
cool. That's very cool.
All right, so Jeff Bull, I know my audience hasn't met you before, so why don't we walk down where you come from, how you started, and a little bit of intro on who you are.
Absolutely. So Jeff Bull, I've been doing content creation for a number of years now. Actually, what got me really started, I'll give you some other background too, but what got me really
Mm-hmm.
started doing content just in general and being okay with it um, was funny enough. Luria Petrucci and the live streaming pros, they do that LIDA program live every day in April. And the
Yeah.
first time I got to participate was like right around the time the pandemic was starting. So April 2020.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I came across it, randomly came across it on Facebook someplace, and I participated. And at that time, I was trying to do, I was in a role, I worked for Cisco. I was in sales and I was in a technical role trying to find a way to better connect with audiences when we go to events and things like this. And I wanted to do more content creation, but I was really nervous about being on camera. I wanted to talk, but everything I felt like a blocker. And so I went through her program for 30 days. And what it really helped me feel is just more comfortable looking at a lens and being okay with saying the things that are in the spaghetti mess that is a brain of mine.
That's right.
Um, and it helped a lot. But aside from that, I I've been most of my career I've spent in network engineering. So,
Mhm.
working for Cisco, not primarily, but doing network architecture, things like that, and being in various roles in technology. I currently work still for Cisco. I'm in a group called Developer Relations, and our whole thing is to be the advocates to software developer communities
Mhm.
outside Cisco for how we can help them use our platforms to
Yeah.
improve what they do every day. And it's all content creation. Everyone who works for me on my team are creators. They write blogs, they write code samples, they do videos, you name it. And so
Nice.
getting to do more of that is a lot of fun. Getting to use these skills that I love, these passions that I have, and just bring them into something new that I've never done professionally, but it's a lot of fun. It just makes it a
Mhm.
blast.
Wow, dude, that's a really good angle, especially because you're creating connections as a big company with the developers, which play a huge role in how the software and the hardware meld together and being deployed because Cisco has certification. They have so many different. They have the network professional program. And I remember back in the '90s, I was like, I want to go into networking because it was so hot back then, right? It was it
Right.
was like everybody's you gotta have networking to be able to get to the internet. And I remember playing like when got my very first. So I didn't really grow up in the U.S., but when I came to the U.S. in the '95, I got my first computer, and after a few years, I was online, America Online, but in our area they have fiber, but
Oh,
only to
wow.
download. To upload, you still need to dial up.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So
You're bringing back memories.
I had that one. I was like, whoa, I'm getting fast downloads. But before that, even, um, I set up this computer in our garage. We had two telephone lines coming in, and then I would log on to it. I don't remember how it connected to that computer, but there was a software that would combine the two phone line connections together at 56 baud or 128. I don't remember the speed. I think it was 56.6. And it was like, oh, we have 128 kilobits. We don't have to pay the T1 line price,
Oh,
the
I
DSL
remember
pricing.
I remember what a buddy of mine, I think it was probably in 90, I was in a 94, I was a freshman in high school, and I had a Pentium. My dad finally got me a computer. It's a
Yeah,
Pentium 166 with MMX, bought from his local shop. And
that was the
we
stuff.
had dial up, and I got my next door neighbor gave me a modem that upgraded me from 3600 to 14.4. And I was like, oh my god, my
Oh my
brain just
god,
about
it's so
exploded. I'm like,
fast.
it's so fast, it's so fast. And he's like, well, he's like, I'm kicking you down the 14.4 because I just got the 56K. I'm like,
Of
that's a
course he did.
thing. I remember that
I
that was a,
remember. Yeah,
oh my
I
gosh.
would look. I would look at the circulars, and I'd be like, okay, 56K by U.S. Robotics was the best one, right? Like you want to get the U.S. Robotics, not these cheapos, because that was it's just so funny.
The things that we had to deal with back then.
Oh my god. I was reading an article, or I was scrolling through Reddit, and they're talking about how back in the days you'd really have to be motivated to get online.
Yes.
Okay, not anybody could just jump online. You would have to have access to internet, an extra phone line, a computer to be able to jump online, and then you could make all these. So where did the trolls come from?
And you had to have a reason. Like you
You
didn't
had to
just,
have, exactly, yeah.
it was a very intentional, all the things you laid out and the additional intention of I'm going to be online. I'm not just going to surf the web. Like the
Right.
surfing the web wasn't even a thing we said at that point
No,
because
no.
there wasn't a web in the way people think about it now. You had to be going on to go do a thing. Like it wasn't
Exactly.
I may be gaming or I'm looking for pictures or
Yeah.
I'm going to a website to get dictionary information. But it wasn't there was no like just proliferated web that you just surfed. And then I mean when
Yeah.
that became a thing, then surfing the web was a thing for a
It
while.
was
People are like,
yeah.
what does that mean? I'm like, well, you just got it, and now there's websites. I'm just gonna go see what the. You're basically like just trying to see what exists out there that you can go look at.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that was a thing for a while
It
because
was.
it was such a brand new concept for everyone who grew up at that time period.
I remember there was used to be a plugin for Internet Explorer or something that would give you that would basically randomly throw you to a different website, and you
Oh,
could browse that.
do you remember when Google first came out and they had
Uh,
the "I'm feeling lucky" button,
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you would type something in, and first off, when my neighbor or friend of mine said to me, I'm using this search engine called Google. I'm like, that is the dumbest name I've ever heard. Why are you using that? I'm like, Google. He's like, it's so much faster. I'm like, sure, buddy. He
Sure.
shows me the first page. It looks all silly. I'm like, what? Of course, shortly after, I'm like, okay, that's what I'm using now.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling lucky. And you type something in and like, I don't know. We'll see where it's going to take you. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that.
Oh my God, that brings back so many memories. So thank you so much for walking us through where your journey started, being a network engineer, where you're going and where you're heading now.
Mhm.
So what keeps you motivated? And we talked about in the green room, Star Wars and your love for the storytelling side Star Wars, and then we're talking about the Lego sets that we have and how fun it is to do the build process.
What drives me? Well, I'll tell you a story. I have always been a pretty self-conscious person. Even in high school, I really had a hard time. I always felt like I had to fit in. I never felt like I belonged to anything. And as Brene Brown would probably say, fitting in is putting on a uniform so you can be part of somebody else's group. Belonging is feeling like you can just go to the dance and dance by yourself in the corner. Everything is good. Something to that effect. I never felt that way ever. I'm in my early 40s now, but it took me through my 20s and 30s to finally start to like accept the person I am. And the reason I tell that, or I say that, is because the thing that really drives me for anything that I do now, but specifically content creation and the work that I do in my professional life, is all about how can I help other people as a people leader? How can I help other people realize and be able to say out loud what their passions are, what excites them, and then find ways to bring those into what they do for work and personal life? Because to say that I would bring my passion for Star Wars into work would feel a little odd to say that. And it would be true. Like trying to do a professional video for Cisco and bring in Star Wars in, of course, that wouldn't make sense. But it's not Star Wars per se. It's my passion for the storytelling and the content, how that
Yeah.
resonates with human beings and things like that. I want to help people find those things and bring them with them. That's what really drives me every day. So it actually has made when I pivoted about a year and a half ago into the role that I'm in now, I lead a team of people that do a job that I have never done professionally. It was really, really scary for me. It still kind of is every day because they know things that I just don't know. I've never done that work. But what I bring is helping them see how they can frame their passions outside of work, the other things that they're really excited about. They can actually help influence positively the work that they do every day that you just don't typically think about. Most people don't spend time thinking about. And it's hard because there's a level of acceptance for who you are as a human being and your own, mental health, your own physical health that play into how you're going to show up at work and do the things you want to do every day. People shouldn't be able to enjoy that. Should be able to have a really good time with those things.
Yeah.
But if you can't accept who you are, it's really hard to do that. We all kind of feel like at work, got to put the uniform on, the proverbial collared shirt and the button, the tie. It's not real for every industry, but you can abstract that to any uniform you'd have to wear, which is
Yeah.
just a mask for the person you are. That's what I try to spend a lot of my time. It really is what motivates me to get up every day and talk to people and work with people and, hopefully be a good leader for the team that I have.
No, I really love that answer because the more we realize of who we actually are, right? And for some of us, takes a long time, right? It took me till I was in my 40s to realize, okay, who am I? When I turned 42, I was like, oh my God, this is the answer. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This is the answer, right?
42.
Right? Now, what's the question? So I'm still searching for the question, but I know what the answer is, right?
Exactly.
And lucky for me, I took the journey of being a podcaster, being a beekeeper, being a dad, being a cyclist. All of these journeys that I've taken have taught me something very important, which is the question is, who do you want to be? Who do you want to serve? And how do you bring that to your community?
I love everything you just said. In the last year, I've really made a concerted effort to try to find hobbies because I never thought that I had hobbies. I just never have felt like for years now, I don't have a thing I'm interested in. I was into home brewing for a long time and beer blogging. Actually, when you and I met, the whole sleeve tattoo that's on my left arm, it's all a tribute to brewing beer. But I also realized that there's a negative health aspect that comes along with that. It's to say it nicely. And so I wanted to find other things to do, like you mentioned. I've gotten into woodworking a lot in the last 6 months. I built some shelves and things like that for my house.
Mm-hmm.
Back into reading more. I've been on TikTok a lot more, creating videos. But all these things, to your point, like baking, I love baking. I bake sourdough bread every single week and started during the pandemic doing that. But I still do it because it makes me feel really good. Like I get to
Yeah.
make something with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
And a point you just brought up, what I really loved is we learn something about ourselves through doing these things. Whether that hobby is long lasting or ephemeral kind of doesn't matter. By kind of, I mean, it really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're learning something about yourself that you can take with you into stuff that you do, human interactions you have, your work, I mean, whatever they are. You learn something, and not just about yourself, but about how other people respond to that thing that you do. And it really helps how you have better relationships with people, which translates to whatever type of work that you actually do. So I'm trying out new things all the time. Actually, just started doing drawing. I don't have actually I have it here in my shed. I have a pad of paper I bought, and this paintbrush pen thing that somebody suggested, and I just draw. I
Nice.
am not good at it at all, but every night we do like wind down time with my son, and I find myself just drawing for a bit, and he is
Oh
like
man, that's
staring at like, Daddy, what are you drawing? Like, I have no idea, but
no idea what I'm
it's
drawing.
like a meditation, and it's like, wow, okay, I don't think I'm very good at what I draw, the
Mm-hmm.
output that I have, but I realized that if I just, it taught me something about myself. If I can just sit for a few minutes and do one thing only, my brain calms down. Wow, okay, how do I use that knowledge to do other things in my life, you know?
What a concept, right? What a concept. And like you said, you mentioned I'm not very good at it. Well, kids when they're born, they're not very good at walking either.
Fair enough, very true. It's all a
Right?
practice. It's all a
It's
practice.
all practice. It's all, you're gonna make mistakes. And um, Malcolm Gladwell says that the only way you get a good book out of you is once you've gone through all the bad books.
Yes.
People say, I want to write a really good book, and it's going to be a New York bestseller. And then Malcolm's like, so where are your bad books? Or is it Seth Godin? I can't remember. It's one of these gentlemen. Like, you got to go through those bad books. You got to get through the bad videos. You got to get through the bad exercise to get to the good.
I
And
I'm fairly certain it was. I'm pretty sure you're right on that it was Gladwell. I think I've heard him say this actually in a similar, like in the same breath. I think he even talked a bit about whichever tipping point where he talks about the 10,000 hours thing. And he even says very bluntly, he goes, I really wish I could go back and rewrite that. And he goes, and ditch that, because I don't know. I've heard him say, I don't know what I was thinking. Like 10,000 hours is a joke. Like you're never, like,
it is,
there
yeah.
is no end to being good at something. You're
Mm-hmm.
always trying to be better at something. There's no set time period. Yeah, I remember that. Actually, you reminded me of I was watching Neil Gaiman's masterclass a while back when I was really trying to consume those as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from an author perspective, he talks about the to your point, the books that don't succeed or the stories that don't work. He calls it a compost pile, where you just write these things out, but they're not for anyone other than you, and they don't have to ever go anywhere other than on this
Right.
compost pile that you might tap back into later. They're like, oh, that one idea that I had, or this thing that I tried that didn't feel right at the time, but a piece of that might work for this next thing that I'm doing. But you've got to have that for yourself, and it's not for
Yeah,
anybody other than you. And it doesn't have to just be for authors. It's like
exactly. Could
just
be
stuff
for
you've
anybody.
tried.
I really like the idea of it being a compost pile, because we have a compost bin, and then we're like, oh, my wife is actually telling me that, I don't feel so bad anymore for leftover food or leftover, fruits and whatnot, because we're composting it. We're reusing it when it breaks down. We could use it in the garden. I'm like, aren't you happy that I got some
Wait, are you saying
compost
the
bin?
dish I made wasn't good? I thought dinner was great, babe.
That's-
You're so
well,
right though. Like it's
mhm.
the term I didn't think about it till now. It's one thing or several things becoming something else. Like it's not bad. It's these things. Some things go into the pile that didn't really work or are leftovers or whatever. They just go there, and what comes out the other side is something different, something transformed. That's the purpose of composting, is to create something usable that comes out the other side of that looks very different than whatever went in. But that doesn't matter. What matters is you put something in and something else came out when you needed it.
And you know what? When Gary V says, "Eat shit all day." I know this is a not. This is a clean podcast, but he said eat shit all day, and it totally makes sense if you look at the compost perspective, because once you put all these scraps, there's bugs, there's all sorts of smells coming out of that, because that's the process that it takes. You have to go through that process to come out the other end. Okay, this is usable. This is really good material that I can use to grow a plant, grow a
Mhm.
tree, grow fruits, grow all sorts of things out of it.
Yeah, and to your kind of bringing this to the passion thing, and or the hobbies and stuff that you mentioned as an example earlier, the way that you get there is by trying stuff. Like how do I know if I'm gonna like it? I don't know. Give it a shot. And if you don't like it, well, then you just don't like it. But at least you give it a shot. It could be anything really. Like I picked up woodworking primarily because I already had a bunch of tools, like more like construction sort of tools to like
Yeah,
the shed that I'm in. I constructed this myself. I
nice.
bought, I mean, I bought a kit, but I assembled it myself.
Sure.
But over the years, when I was a kid, my dad gave me like an old saw or what have you. So I had things. I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I already have this stuff. Why don't I try to use it and see if I can do something with it? But there's been other hobbies I've tried where I'm like, that did, yeah, I tried it and it just wasn't, it was okay, but the tedium or whatever didn't bring any satisfaction. But I
Yeah,
learned something from that. It's not a negative. I realized that sort of activity is just doesn't work for me. Well, that's a good thing to know. Okay,
exactly.
what's the next thing I can try that I might actually like?
No, I totally love that. And I'm always looking at, okay, we had some springs replaced in our garage. Now I got these extra springs. I'm like, what can I use these springs for? Like I have all this scrap of stuff. I'm like, okay, what can I make from this? So I keep thinking of different ways to use stuff that came out of like other parts or other pieces, and it's just interesting. It's just amazing.
It really is. Yeah, I love the idea of that reusing or just I don't want to say giving something new life, but like taking something that you have and realizing, oh, I could actually do something else with this. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
It's I have Adam Grant's book up here on the shelf someplace, Think Again. And in that, I listened to the audiobook and actually read the book to a point, but I
Hmm.
realized very quickly the whole idea of rethinking things. Um, and this is a good part of the conversation is rethinking, not for the purpose, not going into it for the purpose of changing your mind. That's not the intent.
Yeah.
That you don't need to change anything about your viewpoint, but rethinking something. And it could be as simple as, well, I have this thing that I bought, this piece of wood or this spring or whatever in my house. It was for this purpose, but I'm going to put it aside for a while and come back to it. And later on, oh, that could actually be a really good, you're rethinking the reason for having a thing or using a thing or doing a hobby. It's nice to periodically go back and look at these things that you have a closely held belief on or made a decision about at some point and go, huh, why did I do it that way? What would happen if I did it differently? You don't have to do it, even pursue that, but just giving yourself the chance to think about that a little bit differently than you have in the past can open your eyes in a lot of cases, or open your mind in a lot of cases to kind of get out of that fixed mindset about one particular thing and move on to a more growth style where you're like, oh, you know what, maybe I could try this. Maybe I could actually be successful in insert thing here, whatever it happens to be.
No, man, that's so right. Hold on one sec. I have somebody breaking my door down, so let me go check who it is. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the episode. We've been listening to Hacks and Hobbies podcast. We're talking with Jeff Bull, and we're having such an amazing conversation, not just about hobbies, but also about the mindset, and anything that you do is not wasted because you come out on the other end as a grown person, as somebody that can reutilize those techniques and those knowledge in new projects. And they say that an overnight success takes about 10 years.
That's so true.
Just
It
10
really
years,
is.
Yeah, you'll be an overnight success, but just going to take a lot of time. What's cool is that I've been doing this podcast for almost 4 years. In fact, it was sometime in April 2018 is when I started a podcast. I just jumped in my car, started recording the podcast on my phone, no less, because I was collecting I was collecting the concepts and ideas from around me, and essentially composting all of those layers of knowledge together. And then Gary Vee's like, dude, just document this stuff. Just go out and record something. And Anchor app was just the thing that I needed. I just sat in my car, put my headset on, started talking. I didn't even know what the podcast was going to was going to be called because I would be I would be told by my colleagues, "Hey, what's your new hobby this week?" Like, okay. So anyhow, back to Jeff Bolt. So we talked about your journey. We talked about your motivations, and you do a lot of amazing things. You're working with a lot of content creators. What can somebody looking into getting in this space take away, or give us some pointers that the audience can take away with them right now and get started, like an actionable. I don't even know how to lay it out, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first I will say this to start with. I'm not a big fan of giving advice. I will happily share my experiences and things that I've gone through. Um, I don't like to use the word advice because, at least for me, it sort of implies that I know more than someone else.
Right.
And you and I probably can both agree on this. Like, we don't.
You don't know anything.
we no, we have done these. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you've done a podcast now for 4 years. I did a show on YouTube on my own channel called At Home that was all about the pandemic and things. But just because I did it a whole bunch doesn't mean I now somehow magically am great at this.
Mm-hmm.
I just did after a while. I
Yeah.
just made the content. And I think the main thing I would share with anybody who wants to create any sort of content, but they're just nervous because, oh, who's going to want to listen to me? That's the most common one. Who would care that I have something to say about this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I still feel that on a daily basis when I'm in
Yes.
TikTok. I'm heavy into TikTok. We're making Star Wars content, and I'm still like, why would anybody want to watch my videos? My wife could tell you every day. She's like, just go make 3 videos. Stop thinking about it and just make
Yeah.
it. And it sounds easy to say, but the thing I would probably tell everyone is through experience. And by experience, I mean I have had experiences. I have experienced things. It's not a lot of experience. It's just I've experienced a bunch of things. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't phase me as much now as it did before. But you said it. You have a number of ideas in your head. You're a creator, or you want to be, and you got a bunch of ideas in your head. Whatever they are, write them all down, and almost at random, if you need to, just pick one. It doesn't matter which one. It really, really doesn't matter which one. You just need to pick one. They should just be ideas that you are interested in, and do something with it. It could be as simple as recording a 10-second video. It could be pulling up the dictation app, some notes app on your phone, and dictating while you talk to your phone for a couple moments, and just kind of like verbally. So it's a family show, but like verbally vomit into your phone for a couple of minutes, and just whatever's in your head, just let it come out and see what
Mm-hmm.
happens. Like, see what shows up. Whatever it happens to be, it's okay. All of those are starting points for something that you want to do next. And the big thing from there is you are going to be nervous, and you're going to be stressed out, super stressed out. And I think the thing I would tell everyone is like, you're gonna be stressed because who cares? Why would I do this? Am I wasting my time? I sound terrible on video, on my microphone. I look terrible on camera. Like, all these things that are going to go through your head. The thing I would tell anybody is, yes, you are going to feel all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us still do. It is not something to have to stress about or be nervous about or worried about. Worried about is probably the word. It is not something to be worried about that you're going through all of those feels. Every single person you see on camera goes through those every time. The only difference is when you have been creating content for some period of time, a year, 6 months, 2 years, 10 years, you have had experiences doing it. So the worry becomes less because you've gone through it. You can look back and no, I remember how I felt on that day, and this is how I got through it. I'm not going to stress about it too much. But literally the only way you get there is by doing this a bunch of times. I am
Yes, sir.
always nervous. It takes me 30 tries to do one TikTok video, and they're 15, 20 seconds long. But I'm not so stressed out about that anymore because I've done it a whole bunch of times now. So for me, it's always, you're going to feel stressed. You're going to be nervous, and you're going to feel worried. But don't let the fact that you're going through all those feelings worry you or bother you. That is literally the process.
Yeah.
Everybody still goes through it. Everybody.
Absolutely. 100%. And the more like a lovely example that I'd like to give. I was at a running store the other day because my podiatrist like, hey, you need better shoes because your feet are that's why your feet are hurting because you're wearing shoes too tight. So I go to the store. I got measured, but then I see these set of shoes for $250. like, holy smokes on it. So I asked the guys, like, what's this shoe for? It's like, well, people who run marathons, people who run, 100-meter races, they wear these shoes. I'm like, oh, why? Because they're super light. So I'm like, you. So I brought it around. I was like, okay, so anybody can go spend $250 and buy these nice shoes. But does that mean that they can do a Usain Bolt run the next day? No way. No
Right.
way. You got to put in the reps. You got to put in the practice. You got to get your body acclimated to running, to doing that activity, to prep the muscle. And that's all it takes. To
I
go up to the first floor of my house, I got to go through the first, second, third, fourth step. You got
Yep,
to go through
absolutely.
that. You got to go through that little bit of struggle
Hmm.
to get there.
I something else you actually just reminded me of that I've thought about many times when I've gone through these processes, but you just touched on it, is you have to get yourself to the place that these tools, like the shoes, we'll use the metaphor of the shoes,
Mm-hmm.
make sense. Because the shoes, to your point, who would buy a $250 pair of shoes day one to go running? You wouldn't, because
Mm-hmm.
why? That would be cuckoo bananas. Why would you do that? Um, the person who buys those buys them because they solve a problem for them, but the only reason they know they have a problem is because they've been doing this thing, whatever the activity, in this case, running, but it could be anything. They've been
Yeah.
doing this activity for some period of time to realize, here are the problems that I have now
Yeah.
that weren't the problem everyone listening, the problem you probably have to have, like, well, I want to create some content. The problem you have is just creating that first piece of content.
Yes.
That's the problem to solve for. Solving the problem of, like, well, I've got this cool mic or this piece of software. Yeah, those can be problems for you at some point,
Mm-hmm.
but those are 10 steps down the line. You solve that
Yeah.
problem when you get there, and then you decide whether that tool makes sense for you for the problem you have to solve. Right now, it's just creating something for yourself to show
Yeah.
yourself that you can do it. And the best way to do this is pick up your phone. Like,
Just pick up
you,
the phone.
you pick up the phone. It has great audio capture. Any phone, great audio capture, amazing video these days. You can make anything, and it'll look beautiful, just right off the bat. Some audio, whatever it happens to be. You just need to make something. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about those little tiny steps. What is the very first thing you can do? First thing I do is I can pick this phone up. The next thing I can do is unlock the phone. And the third thing I can do is open the audio recorder. Those are all the little tiny steps that get you to
Yeah.
the place that you want to be. It's not, I'm going to make content. That's 20 different steps. What's the very first one you can take? And don't
Yeah.
worry about the tools along the way. You have a tool in your phone, in your hand right now, that will do almost everything you possibly could need it to do.
Yeah.
The rest of this that you and I have, this one, we're geeks about it. So we just did it because we're geeks, but also
Exactly.
because we got down that path and we found there were certain problems we wanted to personally solve for. But that is our journey. That's not your journey.
That's right. And I really like what you said. I want to create a content is 20 steps. It's a 20-step book, right? When you pick up an IKEA book or IKEA furniture, they show you in the front of the book, like, hey, if you want to make this, you got to go through these steps. But what I really like is that joke about, what's the first thing that you do when you wake up? Like, oh, I go to the bathroom, washroom. Like, no, 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 you don't do any of that. You open your eyes.
Yes,
Please open your eyes, so then you can wake up.
these little things are reframing of what's in front of us, but
Yeah.
it helps. It really does help, because you start to realize each of those little steps is a tiny step, but we don't think about them. We tend to think about, well, the first step is recording a podcast. No, it's not. Not even. I mean, that's the end result.
That's the end
There's
result. Yeah.
it's what people would call prep work. I don't even like to use that term anymore. It's the work. The work is all the other little things that go up to the
Yeah.
conclusion. Was I have an MP4 file or an MP3 file that is audio. Yeah, but that's the end result. It's
Mm-hmm.
all these little things you do between now and that point that is the actual important stuff. The end result of that file is like, yeah, that's just the marker for you that you completed the 30 other things or 20 other things between the beginning and that point. That's just an
Absolutely.
earmark. Like, oh, I can check the box because I have this. This was the output when I was done.
Man, I love that, and it reminds me of the first Iron Man movie and how he's in the cave and he's like, okay, I need to get out of here. What do I do? Well, he had years and years of knowledge that he could put together a suit and to then get out of there, right? And then all that tinkering that he did for the next version or Mark II, which becomes more machine. It's So he puts the heaviest duty metal in there. He's like, okay, I know what's going to go in there, but how do I tweak and how do I put these things together? So having that, like having the Iron Man suit is an awesome experience to have, number one. And in 2013, we're like, okay, we want to build some of these Iron Man suits. Well, how do we do it? Well, first you need to have the plans for the suit, and then you need to go do the work. And then we're like, wait, what about 3D printing? And 3D printers weren't as prevalent back in 2013, almost 10 years ago. Gosh. So we started backing them on Kickstarter, and of course they wouldn't show up for another 6-7 months, and then the craze is already gone off your head. But I saw and you've probably seen these people on Instagram and TikTok, where they built entire suits using
Mm-hmm.
their 3D printers, and they look sick, and people are like, whoa, where'd you get that from? Like, well, I spent 6 months to a year printing these parts, perfecting it, going through that work to actually build the suit out.
Yep.
So what we're saying here, guys, what Jeff and I are saying is that you got to do the boring work. You got to do the little bit of steps to get to that next level. And guess what? Here's the beautiful part about this community, about the community that we belong to, about the people that we hang out with, is that there's a ton of support, there's a ton of engagement, there's a ton of encouragement. As soon as you decide and you take that first step and tell people like, hey, I'm looking for these kind of folks, you're gonna find you in your corner people that are gonna be like, oh hey, we're here to support you because we know how hard it is and we know how gratifying it is when you go through that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you will find very quickly when you do let yourself open up a little bit, and it's scary, but
Yeah.
when you do, you find your people, and you realize how many of the people that are in that community who are in literally the exact same place you're in, feeling the exact same way you are, and they're just as nervous about saying it out loud too. And then you connect with them, and you're like, oh my gosh, we're okay. Oh, can I take that breath? And like, all right, I can say these things. That person's feeling, because they echo it. They're like, oh my God, I had that exact same question too. And then someone who has a little bit more experience is like, well, I can help answer part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it becomes a waterfall effect. Snowball. It becomes a snowball effect where
Snowball,
it just,
yeah.
and what you start to realize is after a few months or whatever time period that you look back and there's somebody now coming into the community at the same place you were at when you started, but you have a little bit more experience now. There's always somebody further along in that snowball process.
Yeah.
You have to start one place. And once you start there, you start to gain those little experiences. And everybody is always at some place in that spectrum of that snowball effect.
Yeah.
It never ends. The road never, the building of the snowball never ends. You're always adding more. You're just further and further along the process relative to the person behind you or in front of you.
Yep. It's almost like you're going down the freeway and you're going to warn people, hey, there's an accident up here. Make sure that take care of that. And then with apps like Waze, you can, drop it on like, hey, there's an accident, traffic's
Mm-hmm.
slowing down. So as content creators, as YouTubers, as podcasters, we're on the freeway of the podcast. So some people are further along, some people are further behind. But then what's beautiful is you can turn left or right and find your people, and you know exactly which exit to take to get to the next level of live streaming or next level or YouTubing, or it's just amazing
Mm-hmm.
to be part of that community.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Jeff, it's been so much fun talking with you. We've got a few questions for you to quickly answer. I know I've been trying to see if if I should ask these questions in the beginning, but
A little
I
lightning
haven't
round. Okay, I like it.
I haven't come around yet to that. But let's do that. What is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
Playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Ooh, that's such a cool.
I've never played. Always wanted to, but I've never played.
I was talking to somebody and they really like to direct the conversation. And I'm like, dude, you should be playing Dungeons and Dragons because that's exactly you're telling a story and everybody's just experiencing it through their gameplay. Nice. What did you want to be when you were a child?
Archaeologist.
Ooh, Mister.
Mr.
Um.
My calling. I took a slightly different path.
Well, are you doing networking all yet? Archaeology? I don't know. Network related?
Maybe there's some
Maybe.
ideas in there. Apparently, I wanted to be an archaeologist and I wanted to drive a Lamborghini when I was a kid. And my parents took me to a museum, and the archaeologist there was like, "Oh, that's adorable." Like that's not how that works.
That's not right. Um. Nice. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
Oh my gosh, how long do you have?
See, I knew I.
I'm gonna make
This.
it easy. I'm gonna make it easy because we could be here all day. But I will say right
Mm-hmm.
now, my favorite Star Wars movie, because I do spend a lot of time in Star Wars land. My favorite Star Wars movie is Rogue One, because it's an extremely human story.
Mm-hmm.
I love the Jedi, but the space wizard kind of concept is not in that movie at all. It's
Yeah.
100% about individual human beings and how they're interacting with each other. It's a very dark and like gritty show. Not
Mm-hmm.
dark in the scary sense, but
Yeah.
like it's a very real movie when you watch it. And it touches on a lot of feelings and emotions we all have on a regular basis. Like absolutely hands down my favorite. Series would definitely be actually I was watching it last night. It's on Netflix. It's called Abstract. It's a little series, 2 seasons, mini documentaries.
Okay.
Every time I watch these different people who have different roles in the world and do different things, I learn something so completely different about myself and how I could view the world. So if you haven't watched it, it's called Abstract on Netflix. It's absolutely amazing.
All right. That's the next one on the list. I just I've paused my viewing of Ozark right now because I caught up from
Mm-hmm.
binge watching the first 3 seasons. I'm just gonna pause because this is too good. And
Yeah.
I just saw Better Call Saul is up there, so can't remember where I left off on that one. So we'll see if the new stuff is there. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Oh. I mean, it would be a Star Wars movie, 100%. I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully, an upcoming movie with where Bryce Dallas Howard directs it. I don't know. That would be
All
amazing
right,
because she's such an amazing storyteller. I would
she
love
is.
to give her a movie or a series, and I would love to be even just a set actor for a few minutes. That would be so cool.
Well, make sure you sign up for Backstage.com because that's how you get in front of the movie screen. Backstage.com
Writing
enables you
that down
to
right now.
yeah, Backstage.com enables you to see what movies or TV shows are being shot near you, and you can literally um, sign up and like, hey, I wanna play a role, and then from there, there's a lot of different ones, but that was my first one that my friend told me about because he moved to New York and he's like, dude, you gotta get Backstage.com. It's so cool, and he ended up being on some TV shows and doing like a short film, and I got to be in season 2, episode 1, or FBI, the TV show.
Really?
I have like a
That's wild.
2 second spot where not a spot, but it's like I'm in the crowd, and you could like totally point out where I am.
Okay, I am
It was really
totally
cool.
going there after we're done today.
Next question: who is your favorite superhero?
Oh my gosh. Captain Marvel.
Oh,
I love
she
Captain Marvel.
she
She's
is
funny
she's
and snarky and intelligent. Her power, she has great powers, but she's
oh
always trying to find ways to use them for other people and to help other people. She's very empathetic and she's always sort of in her head overthinking things, which is
mm-hmm.
exactly how I am. I love her. I absolutely adore her character.
No, she's done an amazing job, and apparently it was the male hero in the Marvel comic books. I guess I'm not sure. There's like some this
Marvel. Yes, Marvel
Marvel.
was. I've never read her comics, but I've read a little bit about the stories. There's a
Okay,
character called Marvel that I think she gets her powers from, something like that.
I think yeah, I think maybe they had Marvel as the older character in the first movie.
So he was. They changed, if I remember correctly, it's something to the effect of they changed his character's backstory and who he is for the movie. In the books, he is in the comics. He's one particular character. That's I think
Got
how
it.
she gets her powers. In the
Hmm.
movie, they made his character a Kree. Kree.
Oh,
And they
okay.
made him part of the Kree Marvel, and he's like her. mentor slash commanding officer turns
Got
out
it.
to be not a good guy, not a good character by the end. But
Yeah.
it's a slightly different. I mean, I think it kind of accomplishes the same thing for her story, but I think it's a change on what the character's profile is for the movie than what the comic books originally had, as I
Got it.
understand it.
Nice. I like that. I like that. I love when we go back into the archives of our brains and like, oh, connecting the dots, right?
Yes.
Because when I started watching um, Game of Thrones, I caught on later. My wife was watched the show, and I was like, "What is this show? It's weird." And then my buddy was like, "No, no, no, you really need to watch this show." So I caught up to her, and then I did one step more. I went to YouTube, and I found Comic Book Girl 19, and she had the whole lowdown because she read all the books, she saw all the
Oh wow.
shows, and she's like, "Okay, this is what's going down. This is what's happening." I'm
Yeah.
like, and I'm telling my wife all these details. She's like, I don't care. I just watched the show.
That sounds like the conversations my wife and I have about Star Wars. Really, it's me just talking to her. She's like, I seriously don't care anymore. And that's why I have a live stream every week. So my buddy and I can, there's my
There you
outlet for Star
go.
Wars.
There you go. I need to come on. I don't know if do you bring guests on because
Oh,
I'd love to.
absolutely. Oh, you're
Okay.
welcome to. We love having guests on the show. It's so
All
much
right.
fun.
Sweet. Sweet. I can't wait.
Absolutely.
Last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
That's a really good question. I have no idea. Board game, what would I be? Now I'm trying to think of board. Let's say
Sorry, I
Mousetrap.
pressed the wrong button.
It's okay. Let's say Mousetrap. I'm gonna say Mousetrap because it
Mousetrap.
feels like it's so chaotic and all over the place, but there is still a process and there's still a method. There's still an end result. That's kind of like a metaphor for how my brain works on a regular basis. I feel like that's a pretty telling thing about who I am.
No, I'm gonna have to check out the Mousetrap board game. That sounds pretty fun. I was wondering if there is a board game for Star Wars.
Yes, there's been several of them over the years. I'm
Okay,
blanking on their names, but there's also a tabletop role playing game. So like
okay,
a D&D style thing, but for
yeah.
Star Wars. Yeah, there's been one of those for a long time as well. I've never played it, but I know it's out there.
I see they have Star Wars Imperial Assault Board, Rebellion, and Legion Core. Those are
Yeah,
three ones that showed up. Dude, this
they
is
do.
fun.
They do merchandising pretty good. They really do.
No, they do. And what's funny is that um, there's 3,000 new board games every day. Sorry, every month, I think. Just like there's new
Really,
books coming out every month. There's
that's
new
wild.
board games coming out every month. Yeah.
Wild. That's so cool. I love it. I love to see all that new type of content. Actually, there's a creator on TikTok I follow who creates board games.
Check
And
it
I
out.
love following her because she always shows these things. I'm like, what is this that you're making? I want to get this just because
Yeah.
it seems so strange and interesting.
Hmm.
And I love that.
No, it's very fascinating. Jeff, it was a ton of fun talking with you, going down memory lane of hardware, software, um, growing as creators, growing as human beings, and as parents and whatnot. You know, it's as hobbyists. It was is really good, and the the conversation was just amazing. We can go on probably for another hour,
Probably.
but
Thank
I
you.
think we might have to do another episode for that one. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. Thank you for
We'll,
having me. I really appreciate it.
absolutely, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Take care.